Hello, I'm Cerberus Dark One, and coming up in this month's What's on eShop, we have a new game chart and a look at some of July's other new releases. Starting with River Tales Stronger Together. This looks like a great 3D platformer about a cat and a fish teaming up to get through puzzles, but they do recommend playing as a local co-op, which I guess is fun if you have someone to play with. You can also play solo. The way they describe it sounds simultaneous rather than switching between characters, like how Cereza Bayonetta Origins played. Next, we have a fair port of Ace Combat 7, which includes a lot of the DLCs, and is actually supposed to run pretty well on Switch. If you like high-speed aerial combat and a story, this doesn't seem too bad. Now there's a trio of management games, starting with Dungeon Master, where you're building the ultimate dungeon for adventurers to face. Then there's Moonshine Inc., where you're running an off-the-books alcohol business, from brewing and distilling your moonshine to delivering it without getting caught by the authorities. And finally there's Let's School, where you take the role of headmaster restoring an old school building whilst managing the dynamics of your students and teachers. I think that works pretty well as a setting. I'm a big fan of 2 Point Hospital, which also has a closed setting. This looks interesting. It's got an old look to it, like the graphics are NES, but the colouring is even older, with the dual play style of being the kid or using the mech suit. It reminds me of Blaster Master. 20% off, and it's cheap. I'm putting this on the wish list. It's going on. Talk about wish list. We have a music jukebox DLC for Gravity Circuit, along with a deluxe edition to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the game's release. I put this on my wish list, well, a year ago, and it's still on there, so maybe this deluxe version is the one to go for. Also this month, weirdly, there's a trio of free-to-play games, with Bleach, a hack and slash based on the anime, a funny hamster playground single button minigame and base decorator with customizable hamsters, and the very strange new Denpa Men. It's an RPG where you collect little Denpa Men with different abilities and send them out to fight enemies. Makes me think that it's something Pikmin would do in their normal life if they didn't have a captain bossing them about. Now we have Darkest Dungeon 2. This is supposed to be a rock-solid roguelike. I think it looks great and builds on the original's turn-based combat, which has a lot of fans. But weirdly, I hear there are no dungeons in this game. So what's with the name? Which brings us to the original Rogue. Have you ever wondered why all games these days seem to be roguelikes? Well, this is where it came from. The 1980s dungeon crawler combining random generation and permadeath with pixel art for the first time. I'm not sure I'm a fan of roguelikes. I don't like being forced to die before I can make any progress in a game, which is what a lot of them boil down to. Even the Turtles are going roguelike, Splintered Fate. Although I hear this isn't as tough if you get a bad roll. You can still make it through. But it does say endless challenges to keep you engaged in the fight, adapt, repeat loop. I don't know. Roguelikes are not for me. Now this is more my kind of ninja. We've had the Foot Clan, now we've got the Food Clan. A fast-paced 2D runner with a lot of humour. Which brings us to Fueled Up, with a 30% sale until the end of the month. A 4-player co-op about fixing up damaged spaceships, both local and online. It's kind of like Overcooked in space. Shim, a game about jumping from shadow to shadow. We saw this in an earlier indie direct. It's actually an interesting idea. I think it's quite common as a kid on long car rides to imagine something jumping from one thing to another trying to keep up with you. Interesting art style as well. Now here's something that actually interests me. Hot Lap Racing, a simcade racing game covering GT Cross to Formula 1 from a French indie team. I actually watch a lot of racing videos on YouTube, but as a Nintendo gamer you don't really have a lot of choice from the more realistic end of racing. Grid Autosport is great, and from what I've seen, this isn't too bad either. I'm putting it on the wish list. And in keeping with the other trio of games, let me cover another 2 racing games. With this isometric style game, I've never got the hang of top-down races, where left becomes right and right becomes left. And the retro Outrun inspired Steel Racer doesn't look too bad. It's cheap as well. Also heading back to the, it says 90s, but all these games are 80s, right? Donkey Kong, Zelda, Metroid, all 80s. Maybe the World Championships is from the 90s. I don't mind that people like this kind of thing, but why are the weekly challenges shown in the Switch News channel instead of their own channel? I'm not playing them, I don't even have the game. A surprise drop announced at EVO last week, SNK vs Capcom. All the old fighting games are coming out. 36 iconic characters with newly added rollback netcode. That's the big thing, particularly with fighting games. It's got to have rollback, which kind of stops online matches from getting out of sync with each other through lag. I wish we had that in Splatoon. Take control of your parallel selves on a mission to save the dying multiverse in this roguelite action platform. Trinity Fusion has a demo. It kinda reminds me of Metroid Dread, which I guess was a little bit roguelite. And finally we have A Ranger, a role puzzling adventure. This has the same artist from Braid, and 10% off until the 7th of August. With a unique interconnected gameplay grid that snappily unites movement, combat and exploration. I look at something like this and think, how do you even go about designing this? It must completely twist your mind. The new releases chart for July starts with a re-entry at 10 for The Raft Survivor. Another re-entry at 9 with an 85% sale. And dropping 6 places to 8, Little Kitty. Where do you get your groceries from? At 7, I get mine from a Simulation Empire. Stopping at 6th for a coach bus. Hold page 5, the editor's going through hell. New at 4, yet another simulator. This time it's also in a supermarket. Down 2 places, Luigi, last month's number 1. New championships at 2 for the NES fans. While July's new number 1 goes to those roguelike teenage turtles from New York, Cowabunga.
He's gone, guys. What do we do now?
We stop talking and start smashing, that's what.
All over again.
It's weird that most of the chart this month is just simulator games, but I guess that's how it goes sometimes. Are you going to be playing a simulator? Or perhaps you prefer the other choice of roguelike? I'm mainly playing Splatoon on the run up to the end of Splatoon 3. Anyway, I'll see you next month for another What's on eShop.